It's after 7. I'm going to get us going here.
There's a big stamp.
All right. So I'll call to order the January 21st, 2020 meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District. We have a quorum. We've called to order, so we're on to item 3 on the agenda, approval of agenda. Does anybody have any adjustments they'd like to make to tonight's agenda? Okay. I'll make a motion we approve.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the November 2019 meeting. Any adjustments to those minutes? Okay.
Approval?
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the November minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Okay. At each meeting, we set aside 15 minutes for items not on the agenda. Anybody interested in that 15 minutes? No? All right. We'll move on. Okay, so at this point, we're on to new business, and I don't have any new business. Anybody else? Okay. So unfinished business. And Kim, do you know where Alan's at?
He is in the copy room, and he'll be in 1 second.
Okay. So we're at the point in the meeting where we will have the public hearing for the ordinance change regarding the buoys. And I think I'd prefer to wait till Alan gets here to make sure that we don't take a wrong step there. So talk amongst yourselves, I guess. Smoke if you haven't.
So is your house done now?
Yeah.
Is
Pretty
it?
much.
Yeah. Good, good.
Oh, no, he's upstairs making copies.
Are you, would you get out blue ice now, or, you know?
Yeah, once or twice.
Yeah,
It's been too cold.
it has been cold, man.
But yeah, I put a couple tip-ups out there. A couple months ago. Not much.
We, I'm gonna snowshoe when it gets warmer. Our cross-country ski,
Yeah.
but it's just too cold. We just got home from Panama, and it was like 95 degrees.
Yeah. So let's
was
move
like-
it there until
We came home on Sunday night. We actually were supposed to come home on Friday, and Delta let us know that perhaps we should change our plans because of
No, here.
impending snow, which, as my daughter said, what blizzard, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah. We should have come home on Friday.
Did you go somewhere warm?
You know, it was nice to be gone for 2 more days.
My mom did too over Christmas. She actually had to go by ambulance.
you don't
She got that
decide.
bad.
appropriate time, but you can probably turn around.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we're at the point on the agenda for the public hearing for the Bowie ordinance change. And can you help guide us through that, please? To make sure we get that correct.
Sure, Chair and Board. Sorry, I was making copies for another agenda item upstairs. So, public comment, unfinished business. So, yes, we are actually adding code to our body of ordinances, and as such, we do call a public hearing in order to get public comment on the proposed language, which should be in the packet. And at this point, Mr. Chair, what you do as far as process goes, so it's called for any time after 7, which it is, and now you open the public hearing by banging the gavel. The hearing is open. Typically, a city would ask 3 times for public comment, and if there's no response, then you close the public hearing and you proceed on to part 2, which is the passage of the language. So with that, that is the process.
And would we ask for comments 3 times for each of these 3 ordinance changes?
You certainly can.
Or we treat them as a group?
As a group, I would say, just
Perfect.
because it's just easier that way. And if someone wants to comment, they can specify which ordinance they would like to talk about.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so we will close our board meeting?
No, you don't close. You open a public hearing within your meeting.
Very good. So we'll open a public hearing in our meeting. I will gavel the public hearing to order. The purpose of the public hearing is to make a decision about or to get input on the 3 ordinance changes that we discussed at our last meeting. And so at this point, we'll take any public comment regarding these changes. And I'll ask the second time, is there any public comment on these changes? And the third time, any public comment on these changes? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, so now we're on to the second step, which is to vote on these, take some action on these ordinance changes.
Yeah, specifically, Mr. Chair, you're actually asking for votes approving second reading and basically the final draft copies of ordinances 21901, 02, and 03.
Okay, so that's what we're doing. And so do we need a motion to approve?
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve ordinance 2019-01.
Do you want to do them all at the same time, Scott?
Okay. I
Here, for
move-
purposes of doing that, just do them one at a time.
Do
They
it
are
one at a
presented
time.
as 3 different documents,
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
so you're fine.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 2019-01. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2019-02.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 2019-02. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2019-03.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 2019-03. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. So thank you all, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Scott, for moving all this ahead for us.
Yes, I will update the copy of the ordinances for the web.
Okay. Oh, good.
And just as a matter of housekeeping, Mr. Chair, I'll work with Kim and get these published so that they're legal and binding, so they don't go live until they're actually published.
Okay.
So we'll work with Scott and make sure that the timing's appropriate.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're on to item 8, reports and action items. The executive committee did meet in December, and And the only real action that we took was to get to the point that Alan's reached for us with a letter that he'll discuss later regarding the public comment. So that's the executive committee. The next item is nominations for 2020 board officers. The way that the board has typically worked in the past, with last year being an exception because of difficulty getting a meeting put together, is that we make nominations for the chair, the vice chair, and the treasurer at this meeting, and then we keep those nominations open until the February meeting, where we'll again take nominations. Then we'll close the nominations and we'll vote at that meeting. So I'll open it up right now for nominations. But I'll also say that if you feel uncomfortable or if you'd like to be nominated, feel free to let Kim know, and we can figure out a way to make that happen, I think. Okay, so I'll open it up for any nominations.
I'd like to nominate Brian D. Smith for chairman.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a.
I don't know if I have to second that. Or
Yeah, I think it's just a nomination.
just a nomination. Gotcha.
And is that right, Alan?
I'm sorry?
We're just making nominations for chair, vice chair, and we're opening them at this meeting, and we will keep them open until the February meeting and then close them and vote.
Yes, and assuming that someone has a epiphany sometime after the formal meeting, yeah, I'm assuming that you're taking nominations through your administrator, offline.
True.
So make sure you remind people that if they are too shy to speak up here, if it's open, then anyone can write in, and essentially those names will then be read at the next meeting.
Okay, that sounds good. And so at this meeting, if someone wants to nominate someone, they can just do that. Those will be recorded, and then we'll move forward to the February meeting for.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, Mike?
I'd also like to nominate Mark Gantz for vice chair.
Accept.
Mike?
Talk to Diane, email back and forth, she's on vacation. And she'll be treasurer, but she would like to maybe train somebody in, if somebody else on the board is interested in becoming treasurer. So I'll put her name in nomination if nobody else is interested. But if you are, don't be afraid to step up and do that. And it does a couple things. It puts you on the executive committee, which the chair and the vice chair are on, so you have extra meetings where you deal with the hard stuff, I guess you'd say. But it's interesting too, and you learn to do the books of the board. So I'll place Diane's name in nomination for treasurer.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any other nominations? Okay, so as we said, nominations will stay open until the February meeting. So now we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Lake Quality Committee. Mike?
Lake quality, I only have one thing. The lake froze over and stayed frozen on December 2nd. We had a lot of warm weather after that. The lake was not safe for a long time, but it never opened up again after December 2nd. So that's all I have for report.
Okay, any questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. Next, Lake Utilization Committee, Mark?
Yeah, so tonight we did something a little different than we usually do. We usually just kind of pepper these in throughout the year. But it seems to be that one of our biggest issues are the marina docks. So this year we decided to have everything into the appropriate people by November, and that in January we were going to just do the whole bay at once. And that's what we did. But to start off, we have 3 fundraisers. I'll just let you know in advance that all 3 fundraisers, the LUC committee voted to waive the fee as they're for food shelf and things like that. And so the first one is the Polar Plunge, which is this weekend, I believe. And the LUC moved to approve, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Okay. VFW, it says softball and horseshoes. They're scratching the softball this year and just sticking to horseshoes. That's going to be on the 8th and 9th of next month. Same as last year, other than no softball. LUC approved, and I so move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
And the last one is the Barely Open. I forget the exact date on that, but it's been a pretty good program. They cleaned up after themselves, and we approved it, and I so move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Okay, now we get to the marina. The first one we have is docks of White Bear Lake. They're asking for $250 with tenant tie-overs. You remember traditionally they were at $200, and then last year got a permit for $260. Last year they had one for $250. This year their permit's asking for $250 at slips plus 10 at transients. We actually dropped that down 10 as Mike brought in some of our old impact studies that had said moratorium on growth, and actually in the last 20 years or almost 20 years we've actually allowed some growth. So because of that, we decided we need to start paring back that bay a little bit. And what the LUC put in for was, instead of having 250 in tenant tie-ins, or 10 transient, 240 at slips, 10 transient, and where the transients are has to be signs posted saying no overnight docking. So that's what the committee approved 2-1, and I so move.
I'll second it, but I'd like to speak to it also.
Yeah, so we have a motion and a second to approve the docks of White Bear for 240 slips plus 10 transient. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mike?
Okay, as Mark had mentioned, I have the reports. We did a report. We did a lake management plan in '99. We did it again in 2000. Actually, we accepted the 99 report and then refined it in 2000, and it was limiting the commercial bay space. And it was done by Dick Osgood and Steve McComas, two professionals, two limnologists, and we paid them to do it, and they did a good job. And then in 2006, January 2006, we then approved to continue on many of the things. We changed a few things, but as far as capping the number of boats in the commercial bay, we wanted to keep that at the limit, which we have exceeded. The reason wasn't just arbitrary. It was based on the environmental impact to the lake, the density that those docks all fingering and coming together in that circle of the bay, congestion, safety, all that kind of stuff. Well, the docks have increased a little bit, a few. The numbers I can give you if you want, but White Bear Docks was at 186. They crept up to 200 over the years from 2006. They went over that last year, and now they want to go to 260, 250, 10 tie-ins. Our obligation, my obligation to the lake, and I believe the board members, I can't tell you what you should think ever, but is for the betterment of the lake, for the water quality, for certain areas of the lake. Generally, when you look out on the lake, it's not that congested, except on the holidays, very congested. But when you look into the commercial bay, when you look into where docks of White Bear are, it is extremely congested. And when you look at the configuration that he has proposed, it's very tight, very congested. It'll be muddier than it has been. It's stagnant. There's no water to go through there. And so I think just in being a good steward to the lake, we have to be concerned about the water quality of that area. What happens when the lake goes down a little bit, is he going to want to push, all that dockage out farther into the lake? How far? Who knows? So I would suggest maybe we come even lower than 240. Maybe, 200 fits, a few over 200 fits. I think my personal limit would be 2 1/4. And I just throw that out as a suggestion, a friendly amendment to the motion, that it be 2 1/4 rentals, and the 10 transient slips would have to be no overnight parking.
And would that be in the 225 still, the 10 transient?
Drop it to 225 to include the transients,
Yeah. So you'd have 215.
215?
Yeah, it's a question, Mike. Were you proposing that the transients were included in the 225 or no?
No, I said that it was 225 plus 10 transients that
Understood.
would be marked. If I wasn't clear about that, that's what I meant. But
We're still getting
if
up
you
there.
think it would be less, should be less,
Because that would still be,
argue that point.
that would bring it up to 235.
Well, it'd
Basically,
be
if all their slips were full.
235, but there wouldn't be overnight slips.
True.
So those 10 would not be occupied overnight, it would be open. They wouldn't be occupied all the time, except maybe in the evening or when there's, if they're going to Admiral D's restaurant, that type of thing. And it would be up to the owner to place them wherever he wanted. So that would give some water movement because boats would be coming in and out. But a lot of boats are just stuck there, stay there, and then you do a weed treatment or something and everything just drops to the bottom. And environmentally, it's not in our best interests. He's got plenty of parking, nobody will argue that. He's got plenty of lakeshore, won't argue that at all. But when you get into the water where we are responsible, it's really very, very congested.
So it's a question for Alan, really. So the application's been made, and I guess the application actually is for 250 slips plus 10 tie-ups. And is it reasonable for us to come in now and approve something other than this? Or should we reject? Would it be more appropriate for us to reject this, table it? I don't think the application is complete, is it? I mean, does he have letters from the city?
We're just waiting on the letter from the city.
Okay, so
continuance is all,
technically
but
not complete.
technically he's not.
So technically, we can't pass anything tonight, then we should table them all.
Well, no, so it's a question of would we be better off to table it until next month? That way we can communicate with the applicant and say, hey, we have this discussion, could you live with something? Well, what would that look like to you? How would you advise us, Alan?
Chair and board, you pitch an application basically for consideration, assuming the outcome is what you wanted, right? And so all you're doing is recommending and approving what you are accepting. It's your permit. If they don't want to operate within that, they can certainly appeal it. I think we've given provisional approval in the past for slightly incomplete applications when we've been waiting for something like the city letter, basically, with the idea that the assumption is that we're going to get things like insurance certificates and we're going to get the approval from the city as far as parking goes and whatnot. Certainly, like Mike said, if anyone does have parking, it's certainly this operator. So I would pass it with what you're going to do. If they need to appeal it, they can do that. At the juncture you're at now, what I'm hearing is that there's a friendly amendment to get the number down. So that would have to be handled as a matter of Robert's rules that way. But I don't know as I'd table it because now you're negotiating somewhat against yourselves. Approve what you want to approve and let the applicant deal with it.
Fair enough. Susie?
Didn't last year he didn't get some of his information in and never did get it in?
I think that's correct.
I think the application wasn't complete at this time last year.
I don't think there was one complete application completed last year.
The only one was VFW last year.
It was the only one we had.
Right. I think the confusion for this applicant was because of another project that was being proposed. And so the city somehow tied those two together. So, yeah, between the other operators, I'm not sure that anyone actually got a complete application in.
Wasn't that the purpose of us asking for it earlier this year, so that we would get all the information in time for this meeting?
Sure was.
That's what I thought.
Worked really well.
We were told we'd have letters by January if we got everything in after the 10/15 deadline for applications, which all came in on time.
To me, we should be consistent, and again, provisional approval with that. I don't think we should penalize the applicants because I'm sure that they made their request, and it gets us into, we knew this would be somewhat clunky going forward, and so, is this a question that was presented to the city by the board, or did we put the obligation on the applicant? those are some of the questions. So like I said, assuming that no one's moving beyond what we can reasonably foresee as a parking problem, and this was a pretty easy one just because of the availability of parking, we're approving it, assuming that the city would approve it based on the availability of parking. So, at least as I understand it.
So we could do a provisional approval.
And it's just a permit, so if they don't bring it back in before the boats can go out or the slips can go out, I guess it's boats in this case, you can pull it back and say, we didn't get your material, your insurance, your letter from the city, whatever it is, and then revoke that permit.
Is it just the letter from the city that they've got their insurance stuff in?
Yep, everything else is fine.
Marty?
So during the utilization committee meeting, Luke shared an ordinance that I'm new to the committee, so I'm not exactly sure how it reads, but he said 4.5 feet per, or you probably know the ordinance, Mark.
It's actually, as a city, we don't have an ordinance that says this much footage can have this many boats. But the city of White Bear Lake does. The city of White Bear Lake writes themselves a variance every year because they can't meet it.
Okay.
So I think the only two operators in that marina that would actually be
Compliant.
thank you, for the city ordinance is the VFW and Docks of White Bear Lake. Those are the only two. Everyone else in between is out of compliance with city ordinance as far as boats per foot.
So has anybody done the math on how many boats and slips should be allowed for this particular permit if we were to be in?
It's been done, and if you do that, you are, which I'm not against. The board can do whatever they want, but you're going to give the marina we're discussing right now more boats, and then you're going to be taking boats away from everybody in between the VFW and Docks of White Bear Lake. So you're basically going to be displacing boats from Tallies and the city over to somebody who has 700 and some feet of frontage.
Understood. Okay. Thank you for explaining that. But
Okay.
the number, and also, Mike, you said the number went from 170 or 180? Was that what you said at
186,
And now we're at
200,
260?
260.
And can you guys share with us how we arrived at that greater number?
DNR just sent the permit with that number.
He had traditionally had a permit for 200. And unbeknownst to us, he had gone to the DNR to have his DNR permit expanded, which they did. And so last year, we were kind of caught by surprise, and we said, we'll see how it works. But we're not, 60 is too many to add, but we'll let you take 50. And apparently, we feel that that's maybe too crowded with that many. Because there is a thing, here's the other thing. It's really easy to say if you've got a lake that's, a square and you're on one big straight line and you go this many feet for this many feet. But you also have to take into account the topography of the lake, where the water levels are. Is it marshy here? I mean, if 400 feet is nothing but cattails of your 700 feet, then it's not really viable.
Right.
So we kind of try to take all of that into account. And then also, it's an annual permit, but there's also historic things that go on when you're like, well, why would you do that? Things have been running great forever. Like if you did go to the city and say we're going to have to take 30 boats away from you, you'd have to come up with a pretty good reason without accidents or problems or complaints.
And isn't
Am I okay?
You're okay?
Okay, thank you.
isn't White Bear docking now in Tally's ADUA at the end of Whitaker?
It does appear that just was brought up to me that the last, looks like 2 slips,
2 or 3, yeah.
which I would ask Brian to move those over to the other side.
But if we reduce the number that he was going to get, then he wouldn't
Oh, yeah, there you
have
go.
that
You could
problem.
just take it off
Yeah,
of there and
take
not
it
be
off
in
that
Whitaker.
end.
Because the drawing he has now does show him, if you extend the Whitaker line, it just clips that first one, the very end, 2 or 3 slips.
Okay.
Also, on the application that he turned in, the drawing, He's got a little stub dock all the way up by Whitaker, kind of angled over, and we said no to that as well.
Question, that document that Mike refers to, the study that was done 20 years ago, right? Was that passed as an ordinance to adhere to that?
It was accepted by the board as a report. I don't want to waste the evening reading all this, but I'll give you a short excerpt from a letter that was written. It said, "This plan is the product of a year-long planning effort by community representatives who agree to serve with the advisory and technical committees under the facilitation of the White Bear Lake Conservation District. The Board of Directors of the White Bear Lake Conservation District is pleased to present to you the Lake Management Plan, which was adopted by the board."
Adopt. I'm wondering, is there something legally binding on us to follow that?
Alan?
I tried to go back in the minutes and find it, and the minutes are gone at this time. They got, probably in-house cleaning got thrown out.
Alan?
And I can maybe shed a little bit of light on that, Chair and Board. When the Osgood study came out, the reaction from the board was essentially, let's put a moratorium on any expansion in Commercial Bay. And so it was going to facilitate a year's worth of study to see if the findings of that study wanted to be incorporated into future permitting. And it's my understanding that that never really precipitated down into any sort of statement from the board. And so the year passed, and the moratorium, because they're only good under state law, it's a zoning control. It's only good for a year, so you have to adopt something consistent with it, or the thing just kind of dies and the moratorium goes away. So the last thing we got was, it would be good for the lake if you didn't have more than this many slips in Commercial Bay. And that's the last statement back in '04, or whenever it was.
2006. Recommendations on the summer lake use study. Recommend extending the moratorium until a complete next lake use study.
And I don't know if that was adopted.
Moratorium, we did enforce it. I was on the board for a while back then, and we did hold the numbers, and we enforced it. And
For a
it was
year.
what we went by, and all the marina owners knew it. And that's why the numbers haven't changed much. In fact, some of them not at all, until the expansion of docks and White Bear. Nothing against, personally, it's just, you have to look at it from a lake standpoint of view. All the reasons they gave here about the crowding, the water quality in that area, degradation to everything that happens, a little extreme because some of the things, they talk about, waterfowl and all that kind of stuff. Maybe that's a little extreme, but I'm just going water quality, all that kind of stuff. And the lake's not any bigger than it was then, and still has more boats on it. So
Yeah.
I think the assumptions made here in the studies that they did, and water quality studies they did, and what would happen if the boats were increased is still valid today.
And I don't think we did put any official control capping the number. And so if that was what happened and those controls were observed, it would have been then for another year, let's say from '06 to '07, maybe '08, and then enter the rough years where no one was expanding because the water was receding.
Right.
And so now we're kind of
And the
back where
board
we
turnover,
started.
board turnover is good, but the members that were present when this was adopted, we held tight to it.
Yep.
And then as the turnover went, and you say the water went down and there was no demand for slips, now we're coming back, and I think we should follow the recommendations from our professionals and be good stewards of the lake, at least try to be.
It's
And
certainly
that's my
a good,
opinion. I'm not trying to tell anybody what they should do.
Okay, well,
the North Star for you guys, for sure.
okay, so as I understand, the motion is to approve for the Docks White Bear, 240 slips plus 10 transient. And there was a friendly amendment offered to reduce that to 225 slips plus 10 transient. But I don't think that, Mark, you made the motion. I don't know that you accepted that friendly amendment.
I'll accept it.
Okay, so then the motion on the table in front of us is 225 slips plus 10 transient.
And that still exceeds the moratorium.
It exceeds the
39.
amount that was back in the day, yep.
Yeah,
39.
I'd like to see it stay at 200, but, be reasonable. I guess. It's up to the board.
Okay, so that's the motion. Any more discussion?
It's a good compromise.
Okay, so I'm going to call the vote. So all those in favor of of the motion, which is 225 slips and 10 transient, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes with one nay.
One nay.
And that's also, there's some other provisions. So those docks in Whitaker have to get, well, either take that one off there or take them off that part, but he
Okay.
can't be in the Whitaker. And that little stub dock on the north in the drawing can't be there as well. We can talk about
You
it.
can show me, okay.
And wouldn't it be reasonable to ask for a layout of the 240 plus 10 so that we know, or the 225 plus 10, so that we know where those are? Would that be reasonable to request that? Alan?
Well, and the board, to make things very clear about what you're passing, the motion should have essentially been 225 plus 10 plus lose the boats at the end of, I don't have the map in front of me because I don't get
Whitaker
that stuff.
ADUA, it's out of his ADUA.
So maybe you want to make another
Should be
motion?
memorialized what the specific extra details are.
So I'd like to make a second motion then to ask for a new drawing and to assure that the new drawing has no boats in the Whitaker ADUA.
Is that it?
And do we want to add the
And no,
overnight?
and no,
No overnight.
with the, and the sign for no overnight docking at the transient slips. And then the little dock he's got on the Whitaker border, that can't be there.
Eliminate
Eliminate
that dock.
Eliminate
on the
that dock.
drawing at the end.
Yep.
By the Whitaker easement.
Correct.
Street easement.
Correct.
And all that's part of the approval of the application
Yes,
for the permit.
yes. Thank you.
He's made this as a separate motion.
Right, but it's all in pursuance of the
Sure.
permit for docks of White Bear Lake.
Right, but we still need second and the vote on it. hey?
Just clarifying what we're actually,
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second for these clarifying items. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Okay, the next one is the actual business license for the Admiral D, the permit to operate the pleasure boat, cruise boat, big boat. Same as last year, our board, the LUC approved and I so moved.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll just start. Do we need an insurance certificate with this, Mark, or no?
I have it in the file from last year.
Oh, got it. It's just not attached to the
Yeah, it's just
application.
unattached, 'cause he sent me the whole policy, so. I
Okay,
just-
got it. So we have everything we need. Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion?
Is there a limit of how many of those tours he can do on the lake?
It's on his schedule. We don't have any limits. May 1st through September 30th, 11 in the afternoon till 11 at night, 7 days a week. That's what he puts down as his operating hours. Thank you, Brian.
11 in the afternoon or 11 in the morning?
It says 11 in the morning, so thank you.
Okay.
Mike?
Are these all contingent on a letter from the city?
Yeah, all of these are going to be contingent on, from the letter of the city, as far as, and, you know, we might need to change that too, because we don't really require a letter for the city. We don't need to.
I don't think for that purpose, for what he's being licensed for, and this is something Kim caught with all of the other operators last year. So these are all new permits basically for activity on the lake. So I don't think we require any of the pedal pubs or the Admiral to have a letter from the city authorizing anything.
No, just the marinas.
So this is almost like a little business license for the pleasure boat or
Them
cruise
to
boat,
sell
whatever we're calling
product
it.
on the lake type of thing, yeah.
Do business on the lake.
Yep.
That's all it is.
So it's not contingent on a letter from the city.
Okay, Kim, I'm sorry, I'm lost. Did we vote on this? Okay, so we're moving on.
The next marina is Tallies. That one's a bit of a mess, but we did make some modifications. So the operator's asking for 65 boats. However, he only has a permit from the DNR to operate 42. And so, since we can't really overdo what the DNR has, we can limit it, like we just did, but we can't extend it. So what we did was approved it with the proviso that there's only, instead of having what you're asking for, you can only have 42 boats, or which is what the DNR will allow. So that's what the LUC approved, and I so move.
42 includes tie-ins and other.
Yep, 42.
It's everything.
That doesn't include his rental boats, does it?
Yeah, it's everything, 42, everything.
That's
Is there a
everything.
second to the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? And is this, do we have to add to this motion that they need a letter from the city or a complete
Yeah,
application?
and we needed a completed letter from the city as well with this application.
Are you okay with that, Marty?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Lake Avenue Properties, in front of Aqua, no change from last year. LUC approved, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Eight. 8. Next, we have several, or the next is the VFW. No change from last year. LUC approved, and I so move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And we need their letter as well. No, we
I
have theirs.
I have theirs.
Sorry.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
We have 3 from the city of White Bear Lake. I'll start with the easy. The first one was an application for the permanent pier, and the LUC approved, and I so move.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Do we waive the
Mike?
fee on that?
Did we waive the fee on that, Kim?
I'm
On
sorry.
the pier?
No, I had them pay this year, they paid the 1,000.
Dollars, isn't it?
Yeah.
Usually we waive the fee because it's a municipality.
No, I asked them for it, and they paid it.
Would you like to?
I'll make
Could return it if the board would like,
We
but
either collect it from them now or we collect it from them later, so.
Okay, so I accept your friendly amendment.
The friendly amendment is to eliminate the fee.
so I should return it?
And that's the friendly amendment. And you made, who made the second?
I did.
Not Marty, Mike.
Yep.
Okay, so you guys accept the friendly amendment. So the motion on the table is to approve and to waive the fee
For the pier.
for the pier. Any discussion?
You might want to tell the public why you do that.
Yeah. I don't understand.
We do that because it is a public, it is for the public. It's, nobody's personally using it. It allows children to fish. It allows people to get out on the lake who don't usually have an opportunity to walk out on docks and go out on the lake. So I think it's a service to the public that they're doing, and they're maintaining it. And
And I'm not asking for myself, of course, but for the benefit of people watching at home, and it is the policy of the board that we waive that. So we do it for all public structures.
Okay. Next one.
so the next one is Mataska, which is all the moorings over off of by the island, and no change from last year. The LUC approved, and I so move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
The last one is the City of White Bear Lake Municipal Marina. No change from last year. LUC approved. I so move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
Do we have a letter?
I don't know. Did they write themselves a letter? No. So we'll make it contingent on getting the letter before they put their docks in.
Is that okay, Mike? Okay. Okay, so the motion is to approve with the making it contingent on getting the letter. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
There's one thing that I'll say at the end.
Okay. Good. Any questions for Mark?
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Lake Education Committee report. Scott?
Right, the next thing we have coming up is the lake cleanup at the end of the season. It'll be on March 7th at 10 a.m. At noon, there will be a lunch served by the VFW. In the event that it's not safe to be on the ice by March 7th, I know we're going into a couple of warm weeks here. I don't know how the season will fan out. And what we've done in the past in that circumstance is to send the scouts out to parks around the lake to do the cleanup there. At this point, I'm assuming that I will not be around next year to do this. So I would greatly encourage volunteers to pick up this activity. It involves, we provide trash bags, which I've gone out and ordered them from Amazon. We write a letter to the township to make sure we can use their dumpsters. I've done that. I haven't heard back from them. I'll have to bug them again, make sure we have that. And the final thing is that I give a short, say a few words, thanking them on behalf of the 5 communities that comprise the WBLCD, and is what I do. So, actually, all of you are invited to come and clean up the lake, especially the plastic junk.
And just to clarify, the reason you may not be around next year is not...
Yeah, I will be leaving. It's not that I have any terminal condition or anything. So. As much as you might. I wish that on.
Yeah, thanks. Goodness.
So, anyway.
Well, thanks for organizing that, and obviously, that's an important activity that I'm sure the board will carry forward with in some way, shape, or form. Anything else, Scott?
No.
Any questions for Scott? Okay, moving on. Treasurer's report. So we have the approval of the December checks and the January checks. So in Diane's absence, I'll move that for the December, we'll handle these separately. We'll start with the December. I will move that we accept checks 4615 to 4619.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we'll move on to the January Treasurer's report. And I move that we accept checks 4620 through 4623. Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the January Treasurer's report. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, those pass. Thank you. And we're on to the board council report. Alan.
Under my general report, of course, is the bullet point regarding the public comment on the DNR application for the benefit of people at home. Tallies, which is one of the operators in Commercial Bay, has applied to the DNR for an expansion of their water use permit. And of course, as everyone on the board knows, we share jurisdiction, of course, with the DNR. So because marinas are commercial operators, they have to go to the DNR, unlike private folks that just have docks around the lake. So everyone in Commercial Bay, by definition, has to essentially get a water use permit. And Tallies, of course, their last water use permit is quite a bit lower than what the application that you saw tonight actually is asking for. So Tallies is actually under the process of expanding their permit with them, and that process is not yet done. Their application was complete towards the end of last year, but because of the timing of it and the fact that the DNR has to, because it is a public water body and it is subject to public comment before they make an official administrative decision on it, they have to put it out for what's called public comment. And usually that's a 30-day period that agencies have to put out just to collect, like we just did at the public hearing, they get public comment. As you're aware from our last meeting here in November, we kind of knew this was coming, and so I was charged with getting permission to extend the public comment period time because the 30 days was going to run out essentially on the 3rd of January. And so we did get specific authorization from the DNR. They're holding the public comment period open for us to make a decision regarding what our comment is. And as you all should have gotten, the draft letter from me, or public comment from me, which is sort of a group effort as far as the position of the board goes. I asked for comments. I got a couple of them from board members. About a third of the board responded to me. I've made changes to the public comment, and the latest iteration of that is before you now. And so now is our opportunity. You can certainly talk about what's in it. I'm not going to read it into the record because it's not necessarily ready for public consumption yet. But assuming that I can take those changes into account and get them in the final edit, I'll send that to Kim. Kim can put it on letterhead, which it is now, and I'll put a signature block at the bottom of it for Brian to sign on behalf of the board as the official position that would then get sent in as official public comment from the Conservation District. So with that as sort of the setup to the discussion, you have that before you. It is a public comment piece, and again, I've taken most comments that I've gotten. I know the chair sent me something not too long ago today that did not get involved, but I mean, realistically, Brian was just asking questions about the verbiage and the tone of the letter, and so I would invite you guys to discuss at will. Again, there's no reason to worry about confidentiality. You can talk about whatever it is that is in there that needs to be talked about, and we'll make the edits on the fly. And at some point, we'll get the final draft of it in next month's agenda packet, but it will be available on the DNR website as a public comment piece anyway. And for questions, if there aren't any questions about what I just said, feel free to shoot me with comments and edits that you'd like to see from what the letter. I will just add that the letter does essentially go back to what's already been approved, and this is actually the letter references a permit that actually is a little bit larger even than what you approved tonight. If you saw at the bottom of this, it's looking at 47 total slips. That's 42 rentals, however they're apportioned, plus 4 pontoons as rentals and 1 personal boat. And then the rest are all concerning dry dock, which is stuff that is stored up on shore, of course. So I'd stand for questions.
Is there anything in this letter, Alan, that where we would be treating this applicant different than any of the other applicants?
I don't think so. It is...
In Commercial Bay, sorry.
Yeah, it is pushing the applicant, or at least it's recommending that there not be an expansion beyond what the expansion was when the last expansion was given. And to be, fully candid, a lot of this letter was done with the support and help of not only Mark but Luke Mashad, who was much more active on the board, of course, when the last expansion was sought. And so he remembers vividly working with the DNR and the city to get to the expansion point that this letter is actually recommending the slips be. And so for all the reasons that are identified in the letter, the recommendation is to essentially keep with where the expansion got to the last time. And, there isn't a justification essentially for going beyond that. So, and I don't think that you're necessarily treating anyone exceptionally by recommending this as a public comment. I don't remember if any public comment we put in for docks of White Bear when they moved for theirs to be extended at all. But we would go through the same process no matter who asked. If the city wanted to get more at the Johnson Boat Works site, we'd be going through the same process. So then we would be able to look at things like the study and say, look, the bay is crowded, the bay is busy, and we're already at this number. And so we would say we don't recommend that as an expansion either.
So the letter that they're trying to get from the DNR, or the expansion from the DNR, is that for the 84 that they asked for?
They're moving to a much larger permitted number. They would then take that, and that would inform what they would come to this body and get. So as we've talked about before, the DNR, because it's a state agency, we work off of their water use permit. So we can go up to it, but we can't exceed it, because then we're actually authorizing a number greater than what a state agency is actually authorizing. So they're looking at, much like with docks, where they're authorized by the state for what, 250, 260? 260. And you are actually have now passed a permit that's a couple of degrees less than that, because that's your prerogative to do that for all the reasons that Mike said.
I'm just looking at the letter that Keith submitted, and it looks like they want to increase the number of slips to 84. But that includes their dry docks as well.
Yeah, so you have to subtract out if it's 84 minus 16, it would be, assuming that 16 is what's on there. I don't have that in front of me, but.
Yeah, so they'd be going from 42 to 68.
For slips.
For slips.
And that's all that the DNR really cares about, is what's in the water. So they're not permitting anything beyond that. So.
Okay. And that would be amended at the next meeting, or do they have a timeline on that?
By the DNR?
Yeah.
After public comment is closed, I don't know what their process actually is.
Okay.
So if it's administrative, if it has to go up some chain, I can certainly find that out and email you and let you know when their decision-making is done. But they can't do anything until they get the public comment period done.
And when will that be?
As soon as we get our letter in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Technically, it closed on the 3rd of January for the rest of the public. So we got special dispensation because, of course, you only meet once a month, and you don't meet in December. So that's what caused me to write and say, pretty please, we'd really like to make a comment, but we can't, as you remember, because we weren't able to do this process as a public meeting, so that we're speaking as one.
Okay.
So hopefully we get an approval of what I can send these folks tomorrow.
Any other questions for Alan? So Alan, are you looking for a motion by the board to approve use?
Be a ratification of what is in front of you, if you like it, or tell me to make some changes, and everyone can follow along on their copy and approve that. But what I would like is, if you have no problem with what's here, a motion to approve the letter as drafted, and obviously a vote. And assuming that happens, Kim and I will basically make sure it gets into the DNR. There is a digital or electronic portal for me to submit that, and so that's the way I'd do it, or Kim would do it, whatever. And we would just have to wait and make sure Brian signs it tomorrow so that it's an executed copy.
Okay, so that's what's in front of us, board. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve this letter to be sent out?
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this letter, to get it sent out as public comment. Any discussion?
I guess I am having a little bit of a misunderstanding here. We're approving for 42 slips, plus their personal one. It gets up to 47, basically, but they're asking for 68.
Chair and board, what the letter is saying the district could support as an expansion is this number.
This number.
It's slightly lower than what you've approved, but as Mark pointed out, the permit that they have would be, well, it is, what you've approved is less than this. So at maximum, what this letter is saying is 42, which constitutes rental slips, plus 4 pontoons for tie-ons, plus 1 boat, and then the dry dock. So 47 would be the total that, if you looked at an expansion from an expansion point of view, the district is saying, basically give him a few more, right? But not what he's asking for.
And at the moment, we've approved up to what the DNR permit allows.
Currently,
And that's right.
yes.
I guess my concern with that is the docks of White Bear went from 200 to 250. Now they're down to 225. We're saying they can have 5 more docks. And the White Bear docking has, 39 extra? Beyond the 186 they had in 2006, when the moratorium was set, that they should not expand any farther.
Don't look at me.
Oh.
I'm just the writer.
I understand the question, right? That are we being fair here
The percentages don't seem to be equal.
by recommending it through this letter to the DNR that the number of slips at tallies be increased slightly, where we're telling other docks that they have to reduce. Is that your point?
No, my
Susan?
point is that even if you look at the moratorium that Mike was talking about, in 2006, they had 186 slips,
Docks White Bear?
docks of White Bear.
Yeah.
Now we approved 225 tonight. So you're talking about 39 extra slips above and beyond the moratorium. And I guess 5 more for tallies seems not to be quite equal with the percentage of increase.
Right, and I think that part of that has to do with the area that Docks of White Bear has available to them, as far as shoreline and water area versus what Tallies has available to them. And do I have that right, Mark?
Yeah, and also, this is just a suggestion. The DNR could go ahead and go, you can have 80, right? We could say we want 47, he could say I want 80, the DNR could say you can have 80. Then it comes back to us again.
And then okay.
So this is just kind of letting the DNR know that we're okay with this. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look, if this helps you at all, if you look at page 2, I guess it'd be the backside of yours since I printed mine on 1. The second to the last paragraph discusses it as a recommendation consistent with all of the review of the site's capacity and the application done, taking into consideration density, local parking, traffic, approval of the DNR, et cetera, et cetera. So the rationale for keeping it there is, it was an expanded number back when that was approved, and it was based on the capacity. And just like Mr. Paranto said, the lake might be back, but it certainly isn't any bigger than it was when this was approved as an expansion then. So that's what the authors are getting at, I think. Mark can correct me if I'm wrong.
That sounds right.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Anything else, Alan? Any other items, Alan?
I'm good. We'll get this out and into the DNR tomorrow, assuming we can hunt down Brian and get a signature.
And item 9, announcements. Kim?
Just that I have given all of you an updated list of directors or all the board members. And if there's anything you want changed or need added, please just let me know, email it to me, and I'll add it to the list for everybody.
I have an announcement.
Okay, thank you. Kim, Mark?
I got a call yesterday from George St. Germain letting me know that he was going to resign from the LUC, and I just want to say, I don't know how long he worked on this committee. He was here long before I am, and he's going to be missed.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so we're on to item 9. I'll move that we adjourn. Second. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
I was